Hi, my name is Natalie Krista, and today I will be talking to you about AWS Mobile Hub and AWS SDK for iOS. The application that I built was a backup data source application for iOS that I called myData. So a little summary. I decided to use an iOS application that would have the AWS services S3, Cognito, and IAM. S3 functions as a bucket for file uploads. Cognito functions as a identity pool, and that allows the IAM users to be linked to that I would have both authenticated and unauthenticated users. For the purpose of this application, I decided to focus primarily on the unauthenticated users. So I also looked at the AWS SDK for iOS and used some Apple mobile application development tools such as Xcode, Swift, and CocoaPods. So what you would expect for my working demo is that it will allow unauthenticated users to upload files to an S3 bucket and to create a web view interface that allows the user to view all the current contents of their S3 bucket. So now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about benefits, drawbacks, and challenges. So the benefits of it is that you would be using a different price point schema that may be more cost effective than extra iCloud storage. Also, Amazon offers very scalable resources, so with an S3 bucket you have a scalable cloud source that can support multiple file types. Additionally, it would exist privately unless shared with other users. The drawbacks is that the files that you upload into your S3 bucket may not be secure for sensitive files. And what I mean by this is you would still have it private from other users, but my understanding is that certain cloud services may actually own the rights to whatever you post into their server. So I don't personally know Amazon's role on that, but it's something to keep in mind that it could apply. Also, we would only be providing users with unauthorized privileges to view and upload. Additionally, for challenges, we were creating a user interface for the S3 bucket file structure that was attractive and friendly. So let's get started. So the first thing that you would have to do is to sign into your AWS console. And you can do that by going to aws.amazon.com. And after you sign into your console, you're going to have to select services. And here I have an image showing the by steps which services that we're going to be focusing on, which was once again S3, Cognito, and IAM. So we're going to begin with the S3 bucket. So you will have to create a new bucket, and the first thing you would do is, of course, click on S3 here, and once you get to the S3 page, you will be able to see this button that says Create Bucket. And after you create your bucket, you're going to have to change some properties. For example, you're going to have to allow permissions for grantee everyone to list, upload, delete, and view permissions. So the only thing that we really don't want everyone to be able to do is edit. Additionally, because we are working on having a user interface with the files within our buckets, we are going to upload an index.html file directly into our bucket, which will be responsible for displaying the contents in a web page format. So you're going to want to write an index.html file and verify that the permissions are also appropriate for grantee everyone. Once again, list, upload, delete, view permissions. And I gave kind of like a recommendation. Oops. I gave a recommendation for an index HTML file that I found very useful, that is pretty user-friendly. So let's move on. The next step is configuring our Cognito identity pool. So we're going to do this by using the Getting Started wizard to create a new identity pool. In this page, we really want to make sure that we have Enable Access to Unauthenticated Identities selected, and then we can just go ahead and select Create Pool at the bottom. The next screen that you will see will be this screen right here, that will allow you to create two roles, an authenticated identity in addition to the unauthenticated identity. So we're going to go ahead and create these two roles, which will show up in our IAM service console. So after you create this Cognito identity pool, one thing to note is that you're going to want to record your identity pool ID. So I was able to just see it within this code here, but there should be a button also at the top that lets you edit your identity pool, and that page will also direct you to where you can find your identity pool ID. So next step, we're going to go over to the IAM console, and we're going to focus on updating the policies for the unauthenticated user. So really, you're just going to click Roles. You're going to find the unauthenticated user, and then you're going to add a statement such as the following displayed here. I decided to include all of the S3 services. You might want to limit depending on what your application does. And we're finally ready to move on to creating our Xcode project. So you can create a new single view application that will allow Xcode to create the file structure. The next page, after you select single view application and next, it will direct you to filling out product name, organization identifier. You're going to want to select Swift for our purposes, and the device would be iPhone. And you're going to want to check off the include unit tests and include UI tests. So depending on if you've used CocoaPods before or not, you may have to at this point install CocoaPods using terminal. And that can be done simply by using the code right here, sudo gem install CocoaPods. And then after this runs, you'll simply, once again in terminal, run the pod setup code. And that will allow us to be ready to create a plain text file within our project directory that will have the following code right here. And so the purpose of this is to have references to any of the libraries, essentially, that we are going to want to use in our project. So the next thing that I would recommend is using a existing example off of GitHub. They have bountiful resources there, and one of them was a file transfer manager. I went ahead and used that one and built my application off of it. And so if you build it from scratch, you're going to want to make sure you include the following files in order to have a complete working demo. So you're going to have info.plist, constants.swift, main.storyboard. And you're going to also have to create a few files, one of them being bridgingheader.h. So once you have these files, you're going to want to configure them to your specific AWS information. So for example, I had called my S3 bucket name Natalie-bucket-fp. So this is where I had to update the information that was within the constants.swift file. And within the info.plist file, I had to use the pool ID that we got earlier, and then also the region that I was working in, which I was working in US East 1. And now we can work on modifying our storyboard so that it will allow us to display the contents of our S3 bucket. And essentially, you would already be starting with the foundation of being able to upload files to your S3 bucket, to which now you've configured them to be able to access the S3 bucket. And here, this is really looking at getting that button to be able to see the contents. So we're going to have to create a button on the upload screen. We're going to have to create a second view controller scene and also a web view. So this is kind of the file structure in my storyboard that I had to add. From there, you're going to configure the storyboard connections, and what this means is you'll hit Control and drag from the upload pictures to your new second image viewer, and it will create this connection right here. And I chose to have mine set as show. There'll be a few options, but we chose show. Next, you're going to have to configure the web view to display the index.html URL. So the web view is specific for displaying URLs, and essentially what we need to do is connect the button to our index.html and to this web view to create that transition. So I had to update code for the second view controller.swift file. You may not have this file. I had to create it. I also want to emphasize that it's very important that when you're creating this file that you hit Control and you drag from the button into your code, because it will create a reference that will actually let the code work. That was something that took a few hours to figure out, so definitely want to emphasize that. And you're also going to want to make sure that this custom class for the second view controller is set appropriately. At this point, you should be ready to go. So you should hit compile, and congratulations, you've made it. And hopefully you're also being met with this build succeeded view. Also a sanity check if you're curious. They will have a log that will display code that's running in the back end. And so sanity check, there are no errors. Woo! And so these are some images that I showed from my working demo example. So now we are able to upload files such as pictures and display the contents of our S3 bucket within our app. So very quickly, I'm going to see if I can bring this up in my simulator. So to compile and have the simulator run, you're just going to hit this play button at the top. This is now going to create a pop-up window that will show what your iPhone would be seeing if this were running on it. And so here is the button we created. We have the upload pictures format that was brought in from GitHub. And on the bottom, as you see, there's a button to upload. I'm not sure if you can see it. It's a little far down there. So to display that it works, the button loads the bucket and displays all the files that are currently in there. We're also able to hit this upload button, go down and hit select pictures, scroll up, see our camera roll, select an image, hit done, and now you will see an image that is transferring to your S3 bucket. We give it a minute, and as you can see, it gives you a message notifying you that it's been uploaded. So we can go back into this button page, and based off of the timestamp and the date, we'd be able to tell which image that was that we just uploaded. So thanks for joining me, and happy coding!